Hello, listeners. Hello, viewers, and welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Today we have a very special episode in honour of International Leadership Week 2023. And I'm joined by Katherine McCord, an HR specialist and very passionate advocate of diversity and inclusion, which, by happy coincidence, will be the theme of today's episode.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Katherine, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here with you today.
Excellent. Pleased to hear it. I will let you kick us off by telling everyone a bit about yourself, your background, your career, and what you get up to today.
Thank you. So I work in people operations consulting, so the people side of HR, right? So not the payroll and the kind of the administrative side, but the exciting human aspect of HR. And I've been doing that since 2014. I run my own company, Titan Management. We also do agency style recruiting, except better than a lot of agencies, in my opinion. And then I do a lot of work educating around how to build HR and how to recruit better and more inclusively and more innovatively. Is that a word? I don't think it is. With more innovation. And
it is now.
It is now. We created a new word on your show today. And how to, like I said, just how to be a little bit more inclusive. So I do a lot of speaking and a lot of teaching around those topics. Yeah. And I nearly forgot. I invented an HR technology that fires the resume and is anti-bias. So there you go.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Tell me a bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I always just was annoyed by applicant tracking systems in general. There are one or two really good ones out there. But outside of those, they're just awful, right? And they haven't really been updated since the 90s, which is bizarre. So in terms of basic format. So I set out to fix them one day. I woke up, I had been sleep deprived for days, and I woke up at 3:30 in the morning to head to the airport. And so I'm driving along at about 4:30 in the morning, completely sleep deprived. And I was like, I have an idea. I know how to fix this. And I also have a way to remove resumes, because resumes are completely bias generating, right? So, and Harvard Business Review has done some studies about that, as is multiple other organizations, but they're just riddled with bias generating information, even down to things such as color, where people are offended by green or offended by red. And so they won't call you because you use those colors on your resume, which is silly. So I just had this idea, and I reached out to some brilliant humans that I know, and we did a bunch of work talking to people in different diverse communities, every diversity we could find, did multiple focus groups, really enjoyed that work. Actually, it really was a very exciting experience. And then we made an applicant tracking system designed by hiring professionals for hiring professionals and by diverse folks for diverse folks. And so it does not use the resume at all. It doesn't use names. It doesn't use dates. It doesn't use titles, job titles, because job titles could confuse people. I think you and I had that discussion pre-show at one point. And so it's really interesting to kind of see a different type of technology being used. But it's been getting some great reception, so we're really excited about it.
I mean, it sounds interesting. Yeah. I mean, the job title is interesting in itself, isn't it? I mean, how do you sell yourself as a candidate without being able to talk about what you've done before in those terms?
You do, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's actually puts the burden back on the hiring team to actually pay attention to what you're actually saying about yourself, which was important because so often job titles don't really describe what we do, right? So it just kind of made sense to get rid of them. And so instead we have a relevant projects field that they fill in. So it's not just here's what I've done, it's here's what's relevant to this role. And it just kind of helps sync them up a little bit better to the position.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued by that. I can imagine there's quite a few hiring managers out there that would find that a really worrisome. Like they end up with a candidate that doesn't have the experience they're expecting.
It's interesting. People have a lot of concerns until they see it, and then they go, oh, okay, no, this is great. And they just kind of embrace it. But it sounds a lot scarier than it is for a lot of these folks. But and we had a great chance at Web Summit. We had people from all over the world. There were 70,000 people there this past year, and a ton of them came by our booth, and we got to show it to them, and we had fantastic reception from people across the globe. There was only one person that just seemed massively confused still by the time we were done. But I think that was more on the inclusion aspect, wasn't quite grasping why these things were so important, but it was interesting. It really was.
Yeah. I've always found it quite interesting as well, that the small little things that you wouldn't think introduce bias, but actually do. Like
It's
a
true.
person's name, for example. I mean, it's obvious there's going to be a bias there over gender immediately.
Right. Yeah. And race, also, or assumed race, because I've seen a lot of people that make an assumption about race. It's not exactly accurate. And so that's interesting. Also, emails. Isn't that weird? Your email could be bias generating. The school that you attended, because some schools are specifically for, certain genders or certain races or religious backgrounds. And so that can be bias generating. So it's really interesting, just the little things that a lot of people don't think of. Even the towns that you've lived in, people miss that. I have seen people go, oh, I don't want someone from that area. They are blah, 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 blah. I'm going, really? They live there, so you don't want to hire them? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Accent is another one as well, but I guess you don't see that from a CV.
Not always, but sometimes there are things that give it away. So there's certain, so for instance, here in the US, there's certain terminology that we use in the South that's not used in the North. And so you can kind of tell where a person's from based on that. But yeah, you're right. Necessarily accent itself wouldn't necessarily be obvious.
Yeah, I must say the only one I'm guilty of applying as a bias in the past was the font selection. Anyone who uses Comic Sans MS on their CV, sorry.
Sorry, can't do it.
Bad luck.
Or wingdings.
Bias.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of biases against fonts. Now, Comic Sans, okay, I could kind of give you some grace on that one, but I've seen people go, I don't like Times New Roman. It should have been Arial. And I'm like, okay, you're getting be a little picky on that one.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Okay, like just being a little over the top. And again with the colors. And then another kind of funny one that always has tickled me is, well, I don't like that they used bullets instead of stars, or I don't like that they use stars. It's down to the exact type of dot used on their resume to break things down. And I'm just going, why? Why does this matter? You're not hiring a person to write a resume, so who cares?
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose they're fortunate they've got that many candidates that's what they have to pick on to discern between them.
Sadly, a lot of times it's the people that are that picky. Yeah. I've had a search go for what should have taken about 3 to 4 weeks for a very challenging role to taking up to 3 months because they were being so ridiculous about these things. I had one in particular: location, font, color, and then, the person's name. They could determine certain things about the person and didn't care for those things. And which that turned into a whole other discussion with me. But yeah, so in one search, this person was being that picky. I'm like, dude, you already have a limited number of people here, so you're gonna have to ease up just a bit on this. And that's part of the problem today. You hear all this nonsense about labor shortage here in the US, and I will say on the manual labor side, that's correct. It is getting harder and harder to get people to fill manual labor jobs, but on the quote white collar professional side, it's not. There's tons of people out there. There's millions upon millions of excellent, superb candidates that are on the market, let alone the ones that you could poach, right? So there's just tons and tons and tons of talent, but people are hiring with ridiculous criteria, even down to one of the things I preach against, and this always shocks people, is years of experience. Not a fan of that marker. Like, what's your level of expertise? Because I've seen people, for instance, in my line of work, who've been in HR for 10 or 15 years, who are boneheads. who don't, I mean, I wouldn't trust them to iron my socks, let alone anything else related to HR, who discriminate, who are not impartial in their decision making on, when employee relations issues come up. And those people who only care about what the law says, not about, actually taking care of the humans. And so, when you have somebody like that, they shouldn't be in an HR role. But somebody would look at them and go, oh, they have 10, 15 years. They clearly know what they're doing. We should totally hire them. No.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they've been doing that same job for 10 to 15 years without progressing. To me, that would be a bit of a red flag, but...
It can be. Now, some people just really like their level of employment, but what I look for is what else did you take on? So to your point, like there should be some sort of progression. It doesn't have to be like level of employment. I'm not so big on that, but why did you only do these things and never take on something else? Why was there no growth to your career? You just kind of were stagnant forever. There should be some sort of learning, some sort of new project, something along the way. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the years of experience. In fact, I've discussed this with a previous guest. I can't remember who it was. I think it was William Attaway. Anyway, but he was saying, I don't care if you've got 10 years of experience, because if you've actually just spent 10 years doing the same thing you learned in year one, but 10 times, and you've learned nothing, and that, especially if that thing was wrong in the first place, like, why does your experience, in inverted commas, why is that helpful to me? It's not, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. So I preach against that all the time. I'm like, just don't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. And the same thing with college degrees. Now they can be great. I see them more as an excellent plus, right? Like it's a great plus, but for many jobs, you don't actually need a college degree. I've seen college degrees required for jobs that I'm going, okay, I could literally get somebody straight out of high school and teach them how to do this job. This is ridiculous. And even higher level positions, if somebody's been doing the work for 10, 15 years and excellently and having the progressions and kicking, just kicking butt at their job and all that, then why do they need a degree at that point? That's more to me of something that you require for a junior level candidate. What do you think?
I think it's a difficult one. I mean, I used to get told off occasionally by HR managers for putting that on job specs when it wasn't necessary, because their argument was that it's another point of bias or potential discrimination, because obviously getting a degree, there's a social angle, there's an economic angle, you might be selecting people out without realizing. So yeah, I was always wrapped over the knuckles, unless it's absolutely essential to the job, don't put it on.
Right. But I will say, like I said, I think it's a great thing to have as a plus. I do. I'm all for listing, this would be a great plus if you had this, especially for things in the IT field. There are very specific things that it's very beneficial if you would learn this very specific skill. So things like that, I definitely get it. And then obviously for things like nursing or or being a lawyer, that kind of thing, it's kind of important, and I actually recently, this is not a joke, I saw a post about it is specifically used a post about an RN, and they said, oh, you shouldn't be requiring degrees. And I'm like, that's a legal requirement. You actually have to have that in order to get your license. So no, I'm gonna go ahead and back this person up on this one. That's fine.
That's awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they just chose the wrong, if it was just something that was on their mind and they just chose the wrong post or something like that to use as an example. I don't know, but I thought it was really funny. Now, here's one I saw recently, that now more jobs are asking for photos again in the application, which I see as a major moving backward. Like, why? Why do we need a photo? Why does it matter what they look like? And talk about bias generating. I mean, good Lord. So I'm curious what's causing this uptick. Like, do you think maybe it's like a misguided attempt to be more inclusive, kind of like when they ask for your specific disability or like how you identify with your sexual preference? Like, is it like a misguided attempt at inclusion, or?
I don't know. I'm not even sure that's legal here.
Yeah, I don't know. I know in the US it's not, but
yeah.
I mean, I know in the US, it technically is. It technically is legal, but you could get sued into oblivion.
Yeah. Just
right on into oblivion.
Yeah, especially if the employer is asking for it as well. I mean, we used to get every now and then a candidate put a photo on when they submit because they didn't know any better or whatever. But
right. But yeah, to actually request it, Yeah, I did a whole post. I actually like showcased it. I was like, look at this. It's here on, because I'd heard that this company was doing this. So I went in and applied, and sure enough, photo. And I'm like,
weird. I'm trying to think of a reasonable explanation. Like, why do they think they need to have that?
I know. I can't come up with. So the closest I came up with, this is the closest I came up with, was that somebody from a different country where that standard is running this company, and maybe they've just expanded into the US. Or maybe this is their first time running a company that's US based. That could maybe be it. Maybe they just don't know better. But shouldn't somebody else be going, hey, this is not a thing. This is why I say have other people review your hire process. Have other people review your application process, because they will catch things that you miss. Right? Which is also part of inclusion, by the way. Include others in the process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, particularly if it's one of the examples you gave, if they're operating a new part of the business in a new country. I mean, common sense surely is find out what the norms are in that country if you're new to it.
But common sense, as a very good friend of mine says, is not always that common. So
sadly true. Sadly true. Yeah.
And indeed. Another trend. So speaking of inclusion and trends, I wanted to bring this up today to get your opinion on this. So I recently saw an article in HR.com. It was an article by some KPMG folks, just huge for anybody watching, not the US, a huge organization here in the US, major financial institution. And they conducted this study of, hundreds of CEOs. And what was staggering to me is that 60% said that they were going to be pulling back on their inclusion efforts this year. 60%. I was baffled.
That's very high, isn't it? Yes. I mean, we talked a little bit about this before, didn't we? But I think what staggers or surprises me about that is that many of them are willing to admit it, let alone that it's happening. Right. I mean, that's concerning by itself, isn't it?
It is. I'm with you. That's one of the things that just kind of sticks you like a knife is first the pain of, oh my gosh, what are these people thinking? And I did a whole post about it, about all the things, you're going to lose candidates, you're going to lose your current people, it's, your customer base isn't going to be happy. So it's just not very bright from those standpoints. Plus the lack of integrity that it shows is deeply upsetting. But then on top of that you're comfortable admitting that. Ew. I have so many questions now.
I know.
Because, you're also kind of left with the thought of, if you'll admit this, then what are you not admitting that's going on?
Best not to think about that too much, isn't it?
Yeah. Go down a whole other rabbit hole, just spiral on the show. But it's true. And it's frightening to me that leaders or people in leadership positions are not understanding the importance of this work and are thinking that it's an acceptable place to cut back, which it's not. And inclusion work does not need to be that expensive. So first of all, if your budget is sky high on inclusion, call me. I got you. Well, I can help you rebudget it and decompress that need a little bit, because you shouldn't be spending astronomical amounts of money. But then, it's so even if it's expensive, so what? It's one of the most important parts of the work that you can do. And with so much of the candidate pool and employees and customers all caring about this and being very public about how they care about this, what would possess you to let it go? And what message does that send to your people as a leader?
Yeah, not the best one. Yeah.
Not the best one.
This leads very nicely into the next question, which is, why does diversity and inclusion matter? So
why does diversity and inclusion matter? I love that question, actually. So I'm going to give the kind of businessy, technical pitch it to your CEO reasons first, because I feel like a lot of people do need to make a business case for inclusion. So here you go. So according to, and I have all the studies on my LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to look it up, I actually just did a post on this, so you can look up the sources of these numbers. But I typically pull from Harvard, Psychology Today, and then an actual statistics on our government site here in the US. So that's where most of these numbers are going to come from. So here we go. So Oh, and monster.com. So right now you have almost 80% of candidates saying that they care about inclusion. That's up, by the way, from last year. Almost 80% of job candidates saying that they care about inclusion. And it could be particular types of inclusion, but everybody is caring about inclusion right now. Your employee retention. So first of all, when people are allowed to work in a way that's more natural and comfortable to them, they are more productive. That's just proven science. Again, that's from Psychology Today, as well as other sources as well. Then you have the element of making them feel welcome, the psychological safety element, which is something that every workplace should have, no matter what, the ability to speak up and dissent and express opinion and to let people know what's going on with you. And if you don't have that, people are going to leave you. That, again, over 60% of people are saying that this is something that matters to them. In a survey that I conducted, about 40%, a little over 40% said that they would leave their job if they didn't feel psychologically safe and or included. So you have retention, how you get your employees. Oh, also less job offers will be accepted. So not only are you limiting your candidate pool, they're less likely to accept your offer. So you're killing your recruitment, you're killing your retention, and then customers care. Consumers are more loyal to brands that care about inclusion. And so your customer base is being effective, your innovation's being effective. Boston Consulting Group did a brilliant study about that, that's showing how much profits go up about 19%, and you have more creativity, more innovation, all of these kinds of things. So for all of those very practical reasons, diversity, equity, and inclusion matter. But then the real reason is integrity, which should be part of every business and everything that you do in life. It should be inflexible. The one thing in your business that cannot be moved is the integrity. And when you take away the focus on inclusion, you lose your integrity. And that, to me, is what is ultimately extremely tragic.
Yeah. And what a great use of the word integrity on the Leading with Integrity podcast. There we go. We've ticked that one off. I'm super happy with that answer.
It's one of my favorite words. It has been for years. It's at the forefront of everything I do in my business. I mean, I preach it, I talk about it, I work about it, and every decision I make, I stop and I make sure that we're putting integrity at the front. And I think that that's paramount to being a good leader. And ultimately it sets you up for success, right? Because all the people with the shady business practices eventually get caught, right? And so you see leaders going to jail, you see leaders getting fired, you see businesses going out, you see businesses being bought out because they're failing. And that's why ultimately, when you really look at it, they lost their integrity. That's why I think that basing a podcast on this is genius, just so that you know.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I do agree with you, obviously. I mean, it's particularly from a leadership point of view, all of these things you're talking about, at the end of the day, that culture is set from the top, isn't it? People will follow the example they're given.
Yes.
Or they'll leave the organisation because they don't like that example. Either way, you're losing if you've done it wrong.
Yeah. So get it right, or at least try really hard. And if occasionally you miss, okay. Human error, it happens.
Yeah,
I've
course.
certainly botched it a few times. I have one time, and this is really embarrassing because I specialize with neurodiversity, but I did not when this happened, just for the record. So earlier in my career, very early on, is when I first kind of leadership positions, I was training. So I have several neurodiversities, including obsessive compulsive disorder. And I was training somebody with what he liked to call extra fun ADHD, meaning he was kind of far along the spectrum of ADHD. And I had come into a company that was opening up a new division. I was building it out for them, and I was allowed to kind of poach all the people that I liked best. So I took him from my husband's team. My husband worked for this company, superb manager. And he said, you're great, but you're not the right leader for him. And I was like, oh, I'm going to show you, I got all sassy about it, So I bring him over and I'm trying to train him. And I am just losing my mind. I'm pulling out every trick I know. I am failing miserably. I am frustrated and he's frustrated. And so I finally swallowed my pride and I walked into my husband, who had been training him and had been very successful. And I said, what is happening? Here's everything I've done. I said, I'm failing. What's going on? And he kind of laughs, like just gently, just kind of to himself, and smiles and gets up and says, come with me. And he walks me in there, and he looks at the guy and he says, okay, so where's this that we used? And he did that. He goes, are you doing this like we talked about it? He said, no, I didn't know if I was allowed to, blah, blah, blah. He said, okay. So he did that. And then he said, now what else do you need? And the guy told him. And so we set everything up that he needed. And my husband turned to me and he goes, did you ask him what he needed? And I was like, oh. because it had frustrated me, because we just had conflicting neurodiversities, right? I had just completely forgotten the most simple element was to create the psychological safety for him to tell me what he needed, because there were tools he was missing that he didn't know if he could ask about using. And I had forgotten just to ask him. Ask your people. That's the easiest part about inclusion. Just ask them. What do you need? What do you want? What's going on with you? And so, it's okay to fail. I failed there, but then we had success after that, and things got great and it was good. So it's okay to have little failures. It's what you do to correct them. It's not about perfection.
Quite a powerful story about just the simplicity of asking what they need, isn't it? And so many managers just forget that question. It's I mean, one that I hear quite a lot is this whole treat people how you'd want to be treated when you're a manager.
Yes.
I'm not sure about that one. I think I prefer treat them how they want to be treated.
Yes. Thank you.
But to do that, you have to ask this question, don't you? So
yes. Yes. And I point out too that the kind of dangerous trap. So the general concept of that statement, treat others how you want to be treated, the general concept is good, but what's unfortunate is a lot of times it starts to manifest kind of a self-centered aspect. So it's, well, this is what I would want, so this is how I'm going to do it. This is the things that would work for me, so this is how I'm going to do it. Well, as well as I do with leadership, that's not how it is. It's what they need. And you've taken that on to say that I'm going to take care of these people. And so you need to be focusing on them. So I like what you said better, treat people how they want to be treated. That. Perfect. That's exactly how it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that the best example I can think of that demonstrates that in practice is when you've got the massively extroverted manager who's managing a hugely introverted person. So if they do the first one, treat someone the way I want to be treated, well, an extrovert likes to be in the limelight. They like to be thrust out there and look at me. You do that to the introvert you're managing, and
it's going to backfire real quick.
It's going to go wrong, isn't it? Yeah, quite horribly. You're going to make them feel so uncomfortable. They're going to start hating their job. They're going to start hating you. They're going to quit.
Yes.
Whereas if you just ask them, what's better for you in this situation, and then listen to the answer and then do that, then you've won.
And there you go. Yeah. And steer into your people's strengths. It's always baffled me. I'll go into a situation where there's a team of, let's say, 12 to 20 people, all with essentially the same job, right? A little bit different, but essentially, and they're having everybody do everything no matter what. And I'm thinking, why? If this person's not very good at something, but this person is, but then they have a weakness that this person can balance out, let them find a symbiotic way to exist that works better for them. You steer into their strengths. So, I've had teams where one person focused more on building out the hiring events, and then one person did a lot more of the back end work and sending out the emails and doing all that because that was kind of their jam and they could just fly through it. And people who are better at the in-person screens, people who are better at the phone screens, and we all just kind of found a way to work together. And I had a team like that at one point. So when I was young, I was particularly hot-headed. Imagine that. And and so I worked in a very difficult industry in the financial industry, and so a particularly difficult field. And so I had a partner that had trained me in all this, and he hated, having to do this tasks, the welcome calls and all that kind of stuff for new clients. So I would do that for him. And then in return, and I was like crazy ahead. I had twice the caseload everybody else did. I was way ahead, so I could just plow through that kind of stuff. So I managed all my stuff and I did that stuff for him. And he took the clients that made me want to scream. Like I had just like those 4 or 5 that I was just like, nope, I can't deal with you. And so we just had a deal that I could just hand those people off, because at that time, if young hot-headed Catherine, if you cussed at me, I was going to not cuss, but I was going to tell you about it. so, we kind of found that balance together. And that's really important to steer. And then on the other hand, I took clients that had mental health concerns and things like that. I had a paranoid schizophrenic client we had a great working relationship. So, just finding that strength and steering into it is so very important.
Yes, I think it's balance is the word that I think is taken from that sentence. Yeah, I mean, that's the power of teamwork as well, isn't it? And I think the best leaders are the ones who are able to create that environment where all of their people can find that balance between how each of them works best, as well as with the leader themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It really creates a beautiful situation just to be able to watch people flow and going back to the psychological safety. So people feeling comfortable bringing up ideas and dissenting. So one of the coolest experiences that I ever had was when my team started I was building out a national recruiting team for a large organization, a large national organization. And it was the first one that they'd had, and it was completely new. And I had a bunch of I insisted I wanted to hire junior people. I wanted to train them. I want people that I'm teaching how to do this. I took 2 people that had been doing recruiting, but the rest I trained. And it was really wonderful when they started coming to me going, well, what if we did it this way? What if we tried this? What if this happened instead of this? And we kind of ran with a lot of it, unless there was something I do specifically. Okay, yeah, this isn't going to work because of X, Y, Z. But we ran with it. And to hear people even say, you know what, no, I don't like that. I think I want to do it like this. It was really great. And what came of that was a lot more autonomy and a lot more of people raising their hands, innovation, right? We started having new ways to do things, better ways. Things ran more smoothly. People were comfortable coming in and saying, I'm having this go on in my personal life. I need some help right now. I need a crutch. Help me out for just a little while. And then I'm right back with you. And it created a very strong connection and bond and built a powerfully connected team that could just really work together. And they were all different, all funny and just had their own situations, introverts, extroverts, people with college degrees, people without. And it was really cool. It was a really, really cool situation. So that's one thing I always tell leaders too, is that psychological safety is so important, because when your people know that they can come to you and that they can trust you and that you put them first. I've now gotten some flack on this story too. I had an employee who came to me, and yes, before I say this, I do have permission to share this story. And I could tell something was wrong one day. He'd been one of my best. He was one of my, kind of top people and always a leader. And all of a sudden was snapping at people and just his energy was off. You could just tell something was wrong. So I called him in and I said, hey, what's going on? Talk to me. And he said, my wife tried to kill herself last night. It took a moment to like, okay, process, respond, respond in a way that's helpful, and we just sat there. First of all, we just kind of sat there in it for a minute, like just kind of processed it together. And then I said, so why the frick are you here? And he said, I'm out of PTO. And this was not a company that like, oh, we'll rally and let other people give them their PTO or whatever. Yeah, no, this was not that company. And they were you've taken extra time off, we're going to fire you kind of company. That's what they were. So I said, okay, I will take care of it. You will get a paycheck. You are working from home for the next few days. That's how we're going to fill this out. Take your laptop with you. Maybe answer an email or 2 like every day, while you're gone, but go take care of your family. And he did. And when he came back, he was himself. Things were better. And there was, again, that very strong connection. And so, I've had people go, oh, you should have done that. That wasn't the company policy. Well, to me as a leader, my job was to take care of my people. And as somebody now who helps hire leaders, I would rather somebody with that mentality than somebody who would go, yeah, so what that your wife, her life is hanging in the balance. Go back out there and get to work. Ew. People first leadership. It goes a long way.
100% agree. Yeah. I mean, thinking about what you were saying earlier about the bad leaders and the ones who are not doing things right, and their businesses will disappear, they'll get caught eventually, all of that. Same thing here. Like, if you're the sort of business owner who says, not my problem, didn't happen here, you're not going to last very long in business these days, I don't think.
Not a year after that happened, that company had to sell because they were in financial ruin and because they couldn't get people. And it wasn't just that, but there were other problems too that, but it was horrible. And so they did fail. They did fail. And so it kind of gets swept under the rug when that happens, because a lot of times these companies are savvy. So they'll sell out instead of filing bankruptcy or something like that, or they'll get a bailout. That also happens a lot. But it kind of gets swept under the rug so people don't see it, but it happens without fail. It does. It may take a while, but it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if it takes 10, 20 years to fail, in the meantime, they're not going to be massively succeeding, are they? Let's be honest.
No, they won't. They'll always be capped. When you don't take care of your people, you're always going to be capped. If you don't have integrity, you are capped as to what you can 100%.
Do. Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're looking at it from a completely mercenary point of view and all you do care about is the bottom line, look after your people, because they're the ones looking after your customers.
Yes. So, and like I said, like in that study with Boston Consulting Group that I referenced earlier, you will have 19% higher profits by putting efforts into inclusion and psychological safety. So there you go. It hits you in the pocketbook. You want more money? Treat your people better. Period.
I'm with you.
Hashtag don't suck. That's what it is.
There we go. That'll do. Yeah.
Just don't be a bad human. Like, it's not that hard, Yeah. What I do want to ask you. So this is an interesting one, and I know my answer to this, but I'm intrigued about your answer. I get asked a lot, well, what if, I'm not comfortable, opening up and sharing, or I'm struggling with that and I'm in leadership, and I'm struggling, I know I need to do it, but I'm really having a hard time creating the psychological safety, being a little bit more inclusive. What are your answers for that?
Well, if you're talking about the kind of the showing vulnerability side and being open and authentic and that kind of thing, I think my first advice would be figure out why you're having a hard time with that. And my second advice would be start with something small that you're not that attached to. Maybe, I don't know, share with them something about the company that maybe they wouldn't have been told otherwise, for example, saying where there's no risk for you as the leader necessarily, but it does make you more inclusive in that way.
Right, yeah.
and eventually you'll get used to doing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's essentially what I tell people is start with the little stuff. First internal reflection, 100%. And then start with the little stuff and just kind of let them in a little bit and do it in ways that are comfortable for you. So like now there's a lot of internal podcasting systems. So if you're comfortable instead of face to face, like, oh, today I feel like maybe I can do this video, make a video, put it out as a podcast to your people, and voila, there you go. That works. It doesn't have to be in a format that makes you uncomfortable, like in groups of people or whatever. And I always tell people too, I get it. And I always get funny looks when I say that. Like, what do you mean you're not comfortable being vulnerable? The first thing you do when you get up and talk is tell all about your diagnoses and all these personal things. And it took practice. To your point, it took a lot of internal reflection. I determined that I needed to do this to be successful in what I wanted to be successful in. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And it was a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error, some very awkward moments. But we made it work, and here we are. And for the record, the awkward moments make you more human, and people connect to you. I've gotten on stage on a day that I was having some seizure activity, and I have completely forgotten what I was supposed to be saying. And so, we have a little prompt, we have a little hiccup, and then we kind of all laugh about it. We make some jokes, and then we move on. So it's just one of the things you have to give yourself grace to. You have to give yourself the same, the same space to grow that you want to give to your people too, which is hard. I think it's harder to do it for ourselves sometimes as leaders.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes, it's again, I mean, you hear different points of view on this one. I think one I've heard a few times recently is you've got to look after yourself first before you'll be able to look after anyone else, which I don't know. I mean, on a practical level, that's not wrong, but also it feels a bit selfish to me. So I don't know.
It does. Yeah. Where I don't like that one is when it talks about parents. I'm like, no. Your kid comes first. You're way back there. Like you're a kid first. You way back there. You do need to take care of yourself, but simultaneously take care. It's not an excuse to not take care of your humans, to take care of yourself, if that makes sense. Right. I think you have to balance the priority a little and harmonize. I'm going to say harmonize because balance sounds like you're going to have it even, and that's not always it. Sometimes one has to be higher than the other, but you're going to harmonize that if you're an effective leader, I think.
Yeah, that's a good word. I like that. Yeah. I think do enough for yourself that you're not like falling apart at the seams.
Yes, please.
Enough that you're able to then look after your people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because sometimes it'll shift. Sometimes you'll need to do more for you, less for them. Sometimes more for them, less for you. But just always find that harmony. Find a way to make it flow, right? That kind of makes more sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Anyway.
It makes sense to everybody. Maybe we're just jabbering on and people are going to be like, what in the world are these two on about? I don't know.
Oh, well, I guess we'll find out in the comments.
We're having fun.
Yeah, so I mean, at the start of that pipeline then for diversity and inclusion, I guess is hiring, isn't it? So from the candidate's point of view, if they're facing maybe discrimination in the hiring process, what can they do to improve their chances of being hired? What should they do, I guess, is another question.
It's, some of it comes down to your personality, right? So for instance, with me, I have the seizure disorder is one of my most prevalent presenting issues. And so I've had to, in interview processes, either for a job back in the day or now even with clients, which by the way, is still the same pressure and all that as applying for a job when you're trying to get a new client, I have to disclose because sometimes it's obvious. So sometimes I'll have kind of a facial tic like this that's happening. And I have to tell people, I'm not trying to pick you up. Like, this isn't like me trying to get a date out of you. I have a little bit of a seizure disorder. I'm okay. This is what it is. Or I've had to say, I have to be off camera today. That's a tough one in today's world, right? Which first of all, companies, please God, offer off camera interviews. But so sometimes you have to disclose. And my way is to make humor, is to be funny about it. And so that's what I do. I'll just kind of like I said, I'm not trying to pick you up. That's just what happens. I'll talk about, my dance moves. If my shoulder's going a little bit, it looks like I'm doing a Michael Jackson move, so my way is humor. So that's one approach, is that you can just outright put it out there. If it's something that's going to be obvious, put it out there and just talk about it. I have a very good friend who does the same thing with age. He's been in the job market and he is over the age of 60, and he's just made jokes about it to people and talked about how great he is anyway, and also kind of uses the humor to deflect. And I will say, I will lead that into my first point of, a lot of times what you're experiencing is their discomfort. It's not so much about you. It is their discomfort, their projection onto you. So the main thing is to get around that. So number one, don't make an awkward disclosure. So if there's no need to disclose it, don't. So I don't talk about my seizures when I don't need to, right? That would just be weird. Like, why bring that up? Don't be weird. # don't be weird in a bad way. So that's the first thing. Don't do anything awkward. Second of all, do things that let them know that it's okay. Kind of again, we're dealing with somebody else's fear, somebody else's projection. So you have to kind of console them a little bit on it and let them know. So for instance, with age discrimination, that's a pretty benign one. So I'll use that one. So although it's very prevalent, horribly prevalent. So with age, one of the things that you can do is, number one, don't do things that overly date you. So don't go all the way back in your job history for 40 years, maybe, kind of, first of all, it's not relevant. They don't need to know that anyway. Nobody cares what you did 40 years ago. They don't. So keep it, relatively relatively fresh, 15, maybe 20 years. I like to do 10 years or less. That's just me, but no more than I'd say 15 or 20. And to do things that show energy, even in your resume, use energy words that project energy. That really is highly effective in squashing the ageism. Show things that you're learning, because that's a fear, right? People think, oh, you can't learn, which is hooey. I have a great story about that. But they, it's complete hooey, but it's true. People think that people over a certain age can't learn. So talk about things that you're learning. This is a class, online class I'm taking. This is a new skill that I have, and make sure that they understand it's new, so that then they're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, this person's doing things. They're going on. And then by the time they meet you, they'll be good. So even on your resume, that's the things that you can do to kind of get them out of that mindset. With moms. So when you've had, let's say you've taken, or even dads, I've had some, I shouldn't say that. I had a stay-at-home dad. Parents, if you've taken time off to be with your kids, although I will say it's worse for women, it's just true. When you've taken time off to be with your kids or be a caregiver, anything like that, you receive discrimination, right? So one of the things is the employment gap. There's always the employment gap. And I've seen people, again, hashtag don't be weird, because I've seen people do the weirdest things, like put their experience of being a mother and talk about changing poopy diapers and stuff on their resume. Please, God, don't do that. That's so bizarre. Instead, show how you filled that time, and you should be filling that time as much as possible, doing things to educate yourself and keep your skills sharp. So make sure that you're showcasing that, even on your resume. And when you talk to people, talk about whenever they express fear. So what's with this gap? First of all, that's none of their business. Nobody should be asking you that. That drives me up the wall. Personal is personal. Leave it out of it. So an appropriate question for a leader who just heard that is, what were you doing to keep your skills sharp during this time? What were you doing here? That's a more appropriate question. But let's say somebody has asked you, what's with your employment gap? Say, well, disclose whatever you're comfortable with. You do not need to go into detail. That is not their business. Just say, I had to take some personal time for personal reasons. Problem is solved. Here's what I could do for you. Tie everything back into what you can do for them. That works for everybody. Tie everything back into what you can do for them. So use energy words, find ways to conquer their fear. Excuse me, my voice is going up. I told you, allergies, it's terrible. But find ways to conquer their fear. That's all it is. Whether it's humor, whether it's with facts, whether it's, whatever it is, you do you. I've had several people who are on the autism spectrum. They love facts. These few people I've worked with, that's not true of everybody on the spectrum. But I had 2 of the 4 people that I've worked recently that love facts. So I told both of them, I said, just give them facts about why what they think is wrong. And I said, to make it kind of fun, like, hey, I'm educating you, and say it, say it in a positive way. And that kind of thing works. So you've basically got to educate them a little bit. That's how you get over it. And humor works if you're comfortable with humor.
Okay, yeah, fair. That's good advice all round there.
That's kind of a lot. Sorry, I kind of went on like a whole.
No, it's good. It's good. I think it's really worthwhile and interesting stuff. And I think the second angle to my question is, what should they do? Because you've chosen. Yeah. I'm not going to say the easier, but the more acceptable ones in your examples there, as ageism and some of the.
Oh, I don't mind getting to the harder.
Ones, shall we say.
I don't mind getting to the harder ones.
But with the harder ones, I think it is a question of, should you do anything, or should you just say, right, well, if that's what this company chooses to discriminate,
then walk
on,
away.
Then
walk away.
Interested.
I've had that question several times from people in the transgender community, especially here in Florida. I don't know if you know, but there's a lot of ugly things happening here.
Yes.
And it's very sad, and it's very hard for people. I've been asked that for people with severe racial discrimination, and I mean, it's all horrible and awful, but when I say severe, I mean overt. But the truth is, you have to stop and say, is this something I'm willing to tolerate? Back to the integrity thing, right? Is this a place where I can bend? And if not, walk away, because trust me, you'll figure it out, and I tell everyone, if you don't get a job, think of, my father-in-law always says, think worst case scenario, right? So let's say you don't get a job. You have friends and family that are not going to let you be homeless and starve. It's okay. Find something where you will be safe first and foremost. So if you do not feel safe, so if a guy hits on you in an interview, ladies, because it happens, and vice versa too, but I've seen it more, guys to ladies. If it happens, walk away. Because if that's happening in an interview, it's just going to go down. It's just going to go down from there. If somebody is making you feel unsafe, if there's political stuff all over the wall that is ugly, I've actually had that happen recently. Somebody called me and said, I walked into an interview and there was just all this almost like hate speech, kind of thing. This person was a very strong Republican and had things all over the walls of their office about how dumb Democrats were and all this. And I'm like, first of all, whole other set of lecture for you on the business side of things, but so they didn't feel safe. So just don't respond. So sometimes you have to make that call of integrity. And maybe it's not even against you. Maybe you see something while you're in the interview and you go, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. And you just have to walk away. So safety and integrity always need to come first. Even in interviews, sometimes you just have to make that tough choice. And report them. Yeah. By the way, if it's something where you can report them, please do. I'm all about it. Get with me. I will give you the information to report them. I got you. Even in other countries, I've got a list. So just reach out and report them. They deserve it.
Couldn't agree more. Politics definitely is not one to mix with work. I learned that a long time ago.
Why? Don't do that.
There's just no good outcome, is there?
There's no. First of all, don't talk about politics. Except the only exception to that is acknowledge when there is something that is scary for your people. So, for instance, recently in the States, we had the Roe v. Wade reversal, and a lot of companies chose to address that, which I thought was very smart. So, if there's something scary, leave space for that. And there's right ways to do it, right? And safer ways to do it. So from that standpoint, yes, that needs to be addressed. But outside of that, do not bring politics into office. Don't wear your political stickers. Nope. I've had clients that even banned bumper stickers for cars that were in their own parking lot. They said, no, if you're going to park a car in our parking lot, it will not have a political sticker on it. Leave it at home.
Seems fair. So from the other side of the table, then, we've touched on this a little bit, really, but what are the best practices for hiring, then?
Oh, for inclusion or just in general? I have a whole series.
Let's do both. Why not?
Let's do both. First of all, for inclusion, make accommodations standard options. Okay, so instead of having people, just saying to people, yeah, we're glad to accommodate you. Yeah, so says you. You're really going to discriminate against me. That's what goes on in their head. Okay, so have a list of standard accommodations. If you want one, you can reach out to me, and I am happy to provide you with that. And have that provided, and have them then fill in the blank for anything else. Because what that shows them is I put the thought, I actually do care. Here we go. And then it lets them know that it's okay. So it's okay to have a no contact interview. It's okay to have their fidget spinner while they're talking to you. It's okay to have a notepad and take notes, to wear a headset, whatever it is. These things make people more comfortable. It will make them interview more effectively. And just remember, you're not hiring them based on, to interview. In all likelihood, unless you're hiring an HR professional, you're not hiring them to interview. So who cares how they interview? Find out how they are at their job. And to do that, you have to make them comfortable. So make accommodation standard. And then respond instead of with ego, with curiosity. And this is general leadership advice. So our brains have a natural ego defense that was created for other reasons biologically, but it's not very helpful to us nowadays. So what happens is when somebody tells you something that's conflicting to what your brain believes to be true, it will automatically throw up defenses as to why you're right. Instead of responding with that, when someone gives you feedback, whether it's in an interview, whether it's once you're leading them, respond with, tell me more about that. Help me understand your perspective, because that right there, again, the psychological safety is creative, and it helps you to learn something that maybe you didn't know and to hear what somebody else has to say. And that works not just for obvious inclusion things, but for even as you're interviewing them. If somebody says something and you don't agree with their response, respond with why. Learn. Maybe you'll learn something you didn't know. Maybe there's a reason that they think that way, So there's that. Then on the just good good practices, first of all, have an active employer brand. Be on podcasts, be active on social media, commenting, doing things. When people know you, they'll automatically just come to you. When they know you and they feel comfortable with you, they will automatically just come to you and want to work for you. It works. Don't ask for photos. I covered that. Don't be weird in your application, in a bad way on your application status. So don't ask for people's sexuality. No, that's not inclusion. It's weird. And it's grossly inappropriate. Don't ask for their disability diagnosis. Don't repeatedly ask for their race. That's weird. Again, go through and check your application process. Make sure you're not repeating things. Don't ask interview questions in an application. That is not where you ask that. No. Even the why here, I don't really like. That's I don't know, but that one's the maybe on that one. That's the maybe passable. That's acceptable. Other than that, do not ask interview questions on an application. People will exit. Trust me, I talk to people all day, every day who exit application processes because of that. Don't do it. And keep your interview process reasonable. None of this, and don't take weeks. Okay, it takes hours to respond to candidates, maybe a whole day to initially review their resume and get back. So do that, get the interview on the books, get it going. And as somebody who has gotten a CFO from initial message to offer in 2 weeks, no hiring process should take longer than a week, maybe 2. None of them. There's no excuse. You're not too busy. It's not this, that, or the other. No. Prioritize and get your hiring done. The end.
And they all lived happily ever after? Yeah.
Everyone lived happily ever after in a world in which hiring occurred perfectly. If only.
What else can leaders do to ensure that we're building diverse and inclusive workplaces, apart from the hiring practices?
First of all, ask them what they need. Everybody should be involved in inclusion. If just one person is, you're not being inclusive. It's a kind of self-explanatory title, right? Inclusion. Include. You would, again, common sense, not always that common, right? So include everyone. Have people brought in, and not just through surveys and focus groups and all that kind of hooey, but just in general, ask people. And those things do have their place. They're not full hooey, but people rely on them too much. So do those things, and only anonymous feedback. And the same thing from your candidates, ask for anonymous feedback, but also just talk to them, bring them in, talk, how are we doing with this? What are your ideas? What do you think about this? These types of things. And make sure that other voices are being heard, that other people are helping to plan things. That's very important. When you're educating your people, which you should be doing about different types of diversities, because education is how we break biases and how we learn to grow together. And again, I have some very fun options for that. Reach out to me. You can do yourself. Reach out to me on that. So educate your people, but make sure it's different types of voices. Make sure that you have people who are coming in who are from marginalized communities, that various ones. So different races, different genders, different religious backgrounds, different neurodiversities, that types of things. And people that are focused on a general type of education can tend to be better for the workplace, not so much one little focus, but maybe kind of a more broad spectrum to start there. And then you can kind of go from there and whittle it down as people want to. But broad education is great, and make sure that that it's somebody who's going to engage your people and not just yak at them. That also really helps, because again, the engagement is what's going to get people to pay attention. So that's pretty much it. I mean, everything else I think we covered, but just educate your people, help them learn, and give them opportunities to understand each other, because that's what breaks the biases. Absolutely.
Yeah. I particularly like get the other voices in the room. Particularly, I mean, for me, anyone who's done high school level psychology has heard of groupthink, right? So for me, that's the power of diversity, is you're avoiding that problem. Because if everyone in the room comes from the same cultural background, they all look the same, they all think the same, the quality of decisions that are going to be made in that room is non-existent.
Yeah, not good. Not very good at all. I've always laughed because I'll ask CEOs, they're like, well, why does inclusion matter? I said, well, are all of your clients white males or whatever they are, whatever they are? I say, are all of your clients this exact same demographic and exact same medical diagnoses, exact same everything? Well, no. Aha. There you go. And it's the same concept even just for your internal team as well. They don't all match. So you have to listen. And it's not that complicated. Just put your humans first, listen to them, and then it gets easy.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Hashtag don't suck.
There it is again. Yeah. We're gonna make this a popular hashtag.
We are. Hashtag don't be weird and hashtag don't suck.
There we go. Right, conscious of time, so I'm going to skip a couple of questions and get to the interesting ones. No, it's good. It's good. I'm very flexible about this, so it's not a problem.
Thank you.
So, what have been your own best and worst experiences of leadership in a workplace?
Like where somebody was leading me or where I was leading others?
Well, I think you've done a few of your own stories.
All right. I once put in an accommodation request and then was immediately written up for the exact thing for which I had put in an accommodation request. Immediately, just immediately following it.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't even know what
was it left hand, right hand, or
no, the exact people who had responded
Ooh.
to the accommodation request were the ones who wrote me up. Yeah. That was interesting. That was one of those, who put you in this job kind of things, to the HR person that was involved and to the leader. I was going, oh, come on, like just give me a break here. That was pretty bad. Another one was a leader who came in, took over a COO job, didn't bother to learn anything about the industry, anything about how the reports worked, anything about any of the humans there, and then stood up and gave an entire meeting about how all these people were not doing things correctly, and the entire time was factually wrong about everything he was saying because he didn't bother to learn anything, didn't even use the correct terminology. It was embarrassing. Like, okay, just because you're, supposedly good at being a leader doesn't mean you're going to always know everything. So make sure you learn, ask your questions, and then show off, because if you try to show off first, you're just going to come out looking dumb. And then on the good side, I've had the people that gave me grace on just the worst days. I had one where and actually one of them I'm going to share. This one's a client actually that is in leadership position. And I got to watch a situation where I was having a bad day. So somebody else was trying to help me out and they were having a bad day. So this poor leader. And bad, when I say bad for me, I meant medical. Like medically, I was just not very helpful that one day. And so we were making it work. We were figuring it out. And this leader came in and said, okay, how can I help? Because one was having a technology issue. That was the other person. We would have been fine if it weren't for the technology issue. And I was having the medical. And so he said, okay, what's a comfortable way that we could all very quickly just kind of touch base? Came in, swooped in, helped out. Just said, okay, you know what? You guys always rock it. I never have to pay any attention to you. This one time, I'm going to dive in and just rock it. So don't be afraid to dive in and just help your people, And then another time I had to disclose, one of the first times I ever had to disclose something medical that had happened to me. It was a very traumatic medical thing. And I went and told my leader, who stopped, made a phone call, let the person who they had the next meeting with know that they were going to be a few minutes late, and stopped and took the time to talk to me. And that was incredible. That was a really powerful moment, because it really showed my humans are first. This meeting over here, this can wait a few minutes. This human needs me. And I rely on this human, so I want to take care of them. And he stopped and he just really took the time. And that was incredible. That was a really good moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's it, isn't it? I mean, there's that kind of, it's become a bit of a cliche now, hasn't it, on social media about managers do things right, but leaders do the right things. I think
Right.
that oversimplifies it for me, but
Yeah,
the
it
message in
does.
the middle there is right, isn't it? It's about
Yeah.
more than just getting things done. It's about the people. It's about doing the right
Yes.
thing by them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And getting things done.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. I think that comes second, though. Maybe
It
it
does.
doesn't.
It does. I think it
It
does.
should.
I think it definitely
It
comes
should.
second. Integrity. Integrity
Exactly.
first and
Yeah.
humans first.
Different question for you now. If you were to start your business again from scratch, what would you do differently the second time around, if anything?
I would prioritize the things that really light me up inside more quickly. So I started the business with something I was really good at and that I did want to fix, I did want to do, but I left off the things that the other things that mattered to me for a while, for too long. Like a little bit's fine. You want to kind of start, and make one thing work and then build from there. I get that, but I let it go too long, and I should have dove in more quickly to my other passions. And then the other thing is creating a stronger personal brand more quickly. So not just the brand of my company, but creating the personal brand way earlier on would have made a lot more sense. I would be, oh God, I'd be worlds ahead of where I am now if I'd have done that from the get-go. So personal branding, huge fan.
Good advice for any aspiring business owners out there. I'm sure there's
Thank
some
you.
who are listening.
I hope so. Yeah, go out there and start your business. Do your thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Leadership Heroes.
Time is tight, so last question, and this is always my favourite question, so we'll see what answer we get today. I call it Leadership Heroes, and the question is, if you had to pick one person, and they can be alive or dead, past, present, real or fictitious, who in your opinion would perfectly embody leadership.
Fictitious? Okay.
Yeah, if you want, why not? I've had a few Star Trek captains, but don't let that sway you. So if you had to pick one of those people who would perfectly embody leadership, who would that be and why?
Oh, that is a good question.
I know, right?
Oh, no, that really is. No, it is. I think that for me, I actually had that experience of someone who perfectly embodied leadership. Yeah, I really did. Same job with the jacked up COO. The manager that I had, his name was Harvey, and he just nailed it. And the wisdom that he passed on, the way he taught, and that was a big part of it, right? He imparted his wisdom, and he treated each of us as individuals, but still somehow all equally. Like it was the most fascinating balance, and he really just got it. And he did, he put in the work for the vulnerability, and the psychological safety was there, and the security to dissent was there, and the leading from the ground when he was I'm going to take the bullets for you. So if somebody else in the company is saying this or that or doing this or that, I'm right there to defend you. He nailed it. I don't think I could have found a better leader. And what was really cool is that was a position my husband and I have worked together several times, as you may have noticed from this conversation. We worked together at that position. And after that, my husband had multiple leadership roles, and he became that level of leader. And I think a lot of it had to do with Harvey. So he also spread superb leadership. And I've always thought that was really cool.
That is very cool. Yeah. It ticked all the boxes by the sound of it.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah. I think the imparting knowledge is the really tricky part out of all of that, isn't it? It's, the greatest leaders create other great leaders. So,
yeah.
And they do that because they are willing. They're not kind of hoarding the knowledge. They share their knowledge. They help people learn more. They help people become better leaders themselves.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And he did. And like I said, and my husband, who then was also part of my story and growing, into a better leader. So there you go. It had a ripple, and he did that with other people too. He now has people who used to work for him who are in leadership positions who took that same wisdom and have reached out to him. And so it's that kind of trickle effect, and it's spectacular when it actually works.
Yeah. Yeah. If only it worked with economics, eh? Anyway.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Make life so much easier.
Okay, well, I think we're at the end. The only thing really left is to give you an opportunity if anyone would like to learn more about what you do, or perhaps work with you if they need some help with their HR and their inclusion. Where could they go to do that?
So if you want me to come speak to your group, even virtually, educate, work with you, I actually have I have a speaker website. So it's just kmccordspeaking.com, or on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you can always get me. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So message me, connect with me, reach out to me, ask for resources. I'm here for you. And then also titanmanagementusa.com is the company site.
Awesome. And I'll put those links and everything in the episode description as well, so people can find it easily. Excellent. Well, only thing left for me to say is thank you again so much for your time, Katherine. It's been great talking to you today.
It's been wonderful speaking with you too. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's been great. Thanks again, Katherine. That was great. Viewers, listeners, hope you enjoyed that episode. Hope you gained something useful. If you would like to learn more and hear more from Katherine or get in touch, I've put her website details and everything in the episode description below, so you can click on the thing to learn more. If leadership is your thing, if maybe you're listening or watching as a result of it being International Leadership Week, which I hope you are, and you want to know more about leading with integrity, there's some more links down there in that episode description. Please do reach out. I'm doing free half-hour bookings all week this week to talk leadership, chat through your problems, see if I might be able to help you with them, or maybe just bounce some ideas around. Up to you, whatever you need. I'm happy to help for this week. And as I say, it's free for half an hour only. Alternatively, if you are looking for leadership training or perhaps some mentoring, a more ongoing conversation, I do have various programs available. So click the link below, sign up to the mailing list to learn more, or you can just hit the contact button and reach out to me directly and let's have a chat. Thank you so much for joining us today, for listening, for watching if you're viewing this on YouTube. Really appreciate your time and your interest, and I hope you found it really interesting and useful. And that's it from me. I've run out of time. So see you next time, hopefully. We've got another episode dropping later this week. Again, an exclusive special edition event for International Leadership Week. And failing that, there'll be another episode as normal next week. So in the meantime, do take care of yourselves, have a great week, and remember, be a leader, not a boss.